that if one approaches one's materials, the printing press, the paints, the brushes, the surfaces, in a certain very relaxed and open-minded way, then some of these deeper forces will be released and will become evident in the final image. And in my own opinion, one of the reasons that John Snow in particular became a lithographer, a successful one, and a lifelong devotee of lithography, was that the process itself of making a lithograph allowed him a little space to just let the ideas flow out. A lot of lithography involves planning. Which stone am I going to use? How many editions am I going to make? How many colors do I want to make? Which order do I want to print the colors? So on and so forth. Then, of course, there is the whole issue of lifting the stone onto the press, which probably none of us could do very easily. Certainly, Maxwell Bates had trouble doing that toward the end of his career in Calgary. He had some heart trouble, and sudden exertion was dangerous for him. So the muscle involved, too, is a factor. Planning, rational decisions about colors, shapes, forms, muscular effort of lifting the stone were something that Snow enjoyed very much. And he also liked to have this structure of printmaking around him because he felt safe to let the ideas flow out and just slosh a little bit of color down and see what happened. He personally was not an impulsive, reckless, expressive character. And some people are smiling because they know very well that's a very big understatement. But in his lithography process, he could just relax and be a little bit unbuttoned, at least in one part of the process. I think that's something that you begin to see already in 1957. I'll just talk a little bit about our angry cock here, rooster. Neither Maxwell Bates nor John Snow made very many images of animals or birds. A few. More birds than animals, but neither of them were all that interested in animals, unlike their contemporary Illingworth Kerr, who loved nothing better than to make a picture. Both Bates and Snow made lots of these rooster images, and they're the same format. You see them from the side, usually the rooster in that characteristic way, sort of bent over and fluttering wings and so on. The Calgary artist Ted Godwin, who knew both of these artists very well, Snow and Bates, suggested that these bird images were a kind of inside joke, that they painted them with reference to each other. That is something to think about. No documentary proof being offered here, obviously, but I think they both had very dry sense of humor, so I think it's something possible that could be taking place. Here again you see the very clean, strong, planful forms of Maxwell Bates, comparable to the ones in the still life that we started out with on the other side of the wall. But also, like Snow, especially like the mother and child lithography on the other side, we have lots of texture, lots of shading. To me, the appearance of this surface is somewhat reminiscent of old stone walls. There's a withered look to it, a kind of look of aging, of record of time passing, an old surface. But there's lots of that, as well as the defined forms. I think this is the most loosest, freest, most lithographic of Maxwell Bates' images in the show. girl with the ponytail here. Which everyone recognizes because it was on the little leaflet. Is another example of drawing in lithography. I'm not sure if you weren't experienced that most people would know that was a lithograph because it looks very much like a drawing. Again, we have this blank space, like the blank spaces that are the faces in the parents and children image on that side. I think just like in language, sometimes the strongest statements are the silent, really the silences in between the words, and that's, I think, what we can see with Bates' image. Both Snow and Bates were very interested in Japanese prints, particularly Maxwell Bates. They were interested in art from around the world. Bates is particularly Japanese. John Snow was interested in Indian art as well. They were very cosmopolitan, these two. And they were not just dilettantes. I mean, Maxwell Bates had some real experience with Japanese printmakers and their styles, and I think you can see that reflected here in the color and the form. Obviously the title, it says Japanese actor. Here's a kabuki mask here behind the black texture. But a really Maxwell Bates kabuki mask. That's really one of the strengths of Maxwell Bates as an inventor of images, is his ability to synthesize other types of things, make them his own. He did that with German Expressionism. He made it a very personal visual language with subjects, images that were right to hand, things that he experienced in his everyday life. And he did the same thing here, I think, with this Japanese actor who is hidden behind all that texture, as are many of the figures in the room, with the exception of that one, the first one that we talked about, the first Snow image of the family, the Armenians. Figures tend to be obscured. They tend to be within atmospheres, and there is a sense of trying to figure out where they are in space, why they look the way they do, what their intentions are vis-a-vis other figures in the picture, which is part of the atmosphere of this art. This is an example of extreme abstraction. Maxwell Bates never really became an abstract artist, a real abstract artist. Neither did John Snow, but they were both interested in the idea of forms and colors and spaces and textures that didn't describe the world in any way, that just were there to look at. Neither of them stayed with abstract art very long, and I think if you look at the subsequent few years, in the early 1960s, you can see that they were exchanging a lot of ideas about abstraction. But this is an indication of that interest. You see with Bates, this is called acrobats. These are sort of, you might say, marine-like forms. And they are kind of jumping up and down acrobatically, and you see here the token dance safety net. And we really do know we're at a carnival because we see the scalloped canopy again. So figures that are almost completely abstract, but not quite. If we stay on that subject and just move over to the other side for a minute. This is really the only completely abstract image in the room. And for 1957, in